5 days after surgery, my husband told me to host 14 relatives. I could barely stand. Then they started walking through my front door, each carrying a box filled with documents. My husband thought they were there to pressure me into signing away my family's trust. He was wrong. They had brought evidence against him. And when I opened the first bank statement, I saw his name beside a transfer of more than $400,000. But that wasn't the worst part. Someone had been using my identity for 18 months. Someone had forged my signature. And one of the 14 people sitting at my dinner table already knew exactly who had done it. If you were me, would you confront your husband immediately or stay quiet and find out how deep the betrayal went? Tell me in the comments and subscribe for the next part. 5 days after my surgery, my husband stood at the bedroom door and told me 14 people were coming for dinner. I was still sleeping with a pillow against my abdomen because turning too quickly made the incision hurt. My medication sat on the nightstand beside a glass of water. I had barely been out of bed that morning. Bramwell Voss looked at me as if none of that mattered. "You'll need to start cooking by noon," he said. I stared at him. Cooking what? Dinner. For 14 people? Yes. My surgeon told me not to lift anything heavy. You don't have to lift anything heavy. I also wasn't supposed to spend hours standing. He sighed. Olivia, people are coming. I need you to handle it. My name is Olivia Anderson. I was 39 years old, 5 days into recovery from abdominal surgery, and married to Bramwell for 11 years. Until that morning, I had believed I knew my husband. I knew how he took his coffee. I knew he hated being late. I knew he could spend 20 minutes choosing the right shirt for a dinner he claimed was casual. I knew he cared too much about what other people thought of him. What I didn't know was why he had invited 14 relatives to our house while I was barely able to walk. I pushed myself upright. Who are they? He handed me a printed list. Family. That isn't what I asked. His jaw tightened. Your family. My family. People who should be here. I scanned the names. Some belonged to cousins I hadn't seen in years. One belonged to a man I had never met. Another was a distant relative from my mother's side whom Bramwell had never mentioned. At the bottom were 2 names I recognized immediately. Cressida Anderson. Orrin Whitlock. I looked back at him. Why is Cressida coming? Because I invited her. Why? Because this concerns the family. That answer bothered me more than anything else. Bramwell had never been interested in family matters unless they affected his reputation. I put the paper down. Cancel it. No. The answer came instantly. I watched him walk toward the door. Bramwell. He stopped. I just had surgery. I know. Then why are you doing this? He turned around. Because tonight is important. Then he left. For several seconds, I sat there listening to his footsteps disappear down the hallway. At 9:15, I called my cousin. Cressida answered on the second ring. Olivia. Did Bramwell tell you why you're coming tonight? Silence. That silence was enough to make my stomach tighten. Finally, she said, He told you something different? He said this concerns the family. Cressida exhaled. He told me you're signing something. I sat completely still. Signing what? He didn't say. What did he tell you? That you're changing something connected to your mother's trust. I looked toward the bedroom door. My mother's trust. I hadn't touched it in months. After my mother died, the trust had been divided into several accounts for education, property maintenance, and family emergencies. I handled none of it personally. A professional administrator managed the records, and Cressida was one of the family members who received annual reports. Bramwell knew that. So why had he told Cressida I was changing it? I didn't authorize anything, I said. I know. How? Because you would have called me first. That was Cressida. Direct, careful, and almost impossible to intimidate. She had spent 30 years working as a court stenographer, and she remembered conversations with uncomfortable accuracy. What should I do? I asked. Don't sign anything. The call ended a minute later. I stayed in bed until 10. Then I forced myself up. The hallway seemed longer than usual. I moved slowly, one hand against the wall, until I reached the kitchen. Bramwell was already there. He had laid out 14 place settings. Not casually. Perfectly. White plates. Crystal glasses. Folded napkins. Silver cutlery. He had even placed small handwritten cards beside each plate. I picked one up. Why are there names? So, everyone knows where to sit. I looked at him. You planned all this without telling me. I told you people were coming. You didn't tell me about the trust. He stopped arranging the glasses. Cressida called you. She did. You shouldn't have involved her. I didn't. He walked toward me. Olivia, tonight needs to go smoothly. Why? Because there are decisions to make. What decisions? He looked toward the dining room. You'll understand when everyone gets here. That was when I noticed something strange. There were 14 chairs, but only 13 name cards. I counted them twice. Who's missing? Bramwell didn't answer. Bramwell. He picked up a wine bottle. Go rest. Who doesn't have a card? He turned his back to me. I knew then that he was hiding something. I went upstairs. At 11:30, I called my mother's old attorney, Marlowe Keene. He was retired now, but he still answered his private number when I called. Marlowe, did you authorize any changes to my mother's trust? No. Did Bramwell contact you? There was a pause. Yes. My heart began beating faster. When? 2 weeks ago. What did he want? He asked whether your mother had left instructions allowing your husband to become an administrator. Did she? No. Did you tell him that? I did. Then why is he telling everyone I'm changing the trust? Marlowe became quiet. Olivia, I think you should be very careful tonight. What happened? I received a document last month bearing your signature. My fingers tightened around the phone. My signature? Yes. I didn't sign anything. I know that now. What did the document say? I can't discuss the details over the phone. Why? Because I no longer believe your communications are private. I looked toward my bedroom door. For the first time, I wondered whether someone had been inside my room while I was asleep. Are you saying someone is monitoring me? I am saying you should assume that every important conversation could be overheard. The call ended. I stood in the middle of my bedroom. Then I heard a drawer opening downstairs. I recognized the sound. It was my office drawer. Bramwell had no reason to be there. I walked toward the stairs. Slowly. At the bottom, I saw him carrying my laptop. Why do you have that? He turned. I need to check something. On my laptop? Yes. What? He didn't answer. I held out my hand. Give it to me. His expression changed. For the first time that morning, he looked angry. You're being difficult. I want my laptop. He stepped closer. You're recovering from surgery. You shouldn't be worrying about these things. Then stop giving me reasons to worry. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Finally, he placed the laptop on the counter. Fine. He walked away. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I opened it. The screen was already unlocked. My email account was open. There was a draft message. I hadn't written it. The subject line read, Authorization for Family Trust Restructuring. I read the first sentence. It said, I, Olivia Anderson, confirm that I have voluntarily requested the transfer of administrative authority to my husband, Bramwell Voss. I stopped reading. My hands began shaking. Someone had written a statement in my name. But there was more. Attached to the draft was a scanned copy of my driver's license, a copy of my passport, and a document containing a signature that looked exactly like mine. I immediately took photographs of everything with my phone. Then I heard the garage door open. Bramwell was home. I closed the laptop. He entered the kitchen carrying a grocery bag. Why are you out of bed? I looked at him. I couldn't sleep. His eyes moved toward the laptop. Then back to me. Did you use that? No. He smiled. It was the first fake smile I had ever noticed on his face. Good. That evening, at 6:45, the first cars began arriving. One by one, my relatives walked through the front door. Cressida came first. She hugged me carefully, avoiding my abdomen. You look pale. I feel worse than I look. Her eyes moved toward Bramwell. What exactly is happening tonight? Before I could answer, the door opened again. Orrin Whitlock entered carrying a cardboard archive box. Then another cousin arrived with a second box. Then another. Within 10 minutes, 14 relatives stood inside my house. And every one of them had brought documents. I looked at Cressida. Why did everyone bring boxes? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Bramwell. Bramwell's face had gone completely still. Cressida finally turned toward me. Because Bramwell told each of us that you wanted us here to approve a new arrangement for your mother's trust. I never asked for that. I know. Orrin placed his box on the dining table. I brought copies of the old financial records. Another relative placed down a folder. I brought the property deeds. Cressida opened her box. And I brought the correspondence. Bramwell stepped forward. You don't need to do this tonight. Cressida looked at him. We do. Why? Because you told us Olivia was too sick to manage the trust herself. My husband said nothing. I looked at the 14 boxes. Then at the 14 people. Then at the document on my laptop that carried my forged signature. And suddenly I understood something. Bramwell hadn't invited my relatives because he wanted a family dinner. He had invited them because he needed witnesses. But he had made one mistake. He had assumed they would arrive empty-handed. They hadn't. They had arrived carrying pieces of a story he clearly did not want me to see. Cressida opened the first folder. She looked directly at me. Olivia, before you sign anything tonight, there's something you need to know. She pulled out a bank statement. The account belonged to my mother's trust. The balance was almost empty. And beside the largest withdrawal was a name I recognized. Bramwell Voss. The name on the bank statement was my husband's. The first transfer had been made 18 months earlier. Then another. The recipient was always the same. Northmere Advisory. What is Northmere? I asked. Bramwell answered immediately. A consulting firm. Financial matters? Trust. Cressida gave a short laugh. That isn't what the records say. Bramwell's jaw tightened. You're not the administrator. No, she replied. But I can read. How much? Cressida turned the page. $412,860. That can't be right. Where did it go? Northmere Advisory. I looked at Bramwell. You said you didn't know anything about this. I said I didn't create the company. That wasn't my question. He rubbed his forehead. Olivia, there are explanations. Then explain. He walked toward the window. I refused to fill the silence for him. Orrin Whitlock opened his archive box. I brought the older statements. He spread them across the table. The trust was healthy before Northmere. Elian Rusk added several invoices. These are from Northmere. I picked one up. Strategic Asset Consolidation, Anderson Coastal Property. I looked at Cressida. What is the Anderson Coastal Property? Her expression changed. You don't know? Bramwell spoke sharply. It's nothing. $400,000 is nothing? Where is it? Bellwether Point, Cressida said. The name was familiar. My mother had taken me there when I was 17. There was an old house near the northern coast. That's in the trust? Yes. Why didn't I know? Your mother placed it under a separate schedule. Bramwell turned toward Cressida. Enough. No. Not anymore. He looked at me. I'm asking about my own property. He had no answer. By 7:30, the dinner was forgotten. Everyone moved into the living room while Unia Bellamy connected her laptop. She displayed a transaction map. Northmere received money from the trust, then moved it through 3 companies. Whose? We're tracing them. She clicked again. The third company was Voss Meridian Holdings. Voss. Bramwell stood. That has nothing to do with me. Unia displayed the filing. The beneficiary was Bramwell Voss. Nobody spoke. Why are you the beneficiary? I didn't set it up. Then who? I don't know. Unia frowned. The beneficiary designation was created 6 months after the first Northmere payment. Bramwell stared at the screen. I never signed that. I remembered the forged letter. Maybe he hadn't signed this either. The doorbell rang. Bramwell went still. I didn't invite anyone else. Cressida opened the door. A woman in her late 50s stood outside in a dark raincoat. I'm looking for Olivia Anderson. That's me. My name is Juniper Hale. I worked for your mother's attorney. Juniper entered. then looked at Bramwell. His face lost its color. "So you are Bramwell," she said. "Yes. I was told you would be here." "By whom?" "Your father." Silence filled the room. I stared at her. "What did you mean?" Juniper opened the folder. "Your mother left instructions before she died." She placed an envelope on the table. "The conditions have been met." "What conditions?" "Unauthorized withdrawals from the trust." "Who made them?" "Your mother never named the person." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter in my mother's handwriting. I read it. "Olivia, if this reaches you, someone has already tried to take what I left you. Do not trust anyone who asks you to sign quickly. The property is not the asset they want. The records are." "The records?" Juniper nodded. "Your mother believed the coastal property contained documents that could expose a much larger financial scheme." "What kind?" "Contracts, deeds, correspondence." I looked at Bramwell. "Did you know?" He shook his head. "I knew my father had business interests there. That's all." Juniper studied him. "Your father wasn't the only person involved." "Who else?" She opened another file. "Someone has been moving money through connected companies for more than a decade." "How long?" 11 years. My mother had known. At 10:40, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. "Stop asking questions about Bellwether Point." Another message followed. "Your husband is not the person you should be afraid of." Then, "Ask him about Morel Danton." I looked at Bramwell. His expression changed instantly. "Who is Morel Danton?" He said nothing. "Bramwell. She worked for my father." "What happened to her?" "She disappeared 3 years ago." Cressida looked at him. Why would someone tell Olivia to ask about her? Bramwell said nothing. Juniper suddenly looked up. "Morel Danton." Everyone turned toward her. "You know her?" Juniper nodded. "She was the registered agent for Northmere Advisory." My hands went cold. "The company taking money from my mother's trust?" "Yes." "And she disappeared?" "Yes." I stared at Bramwell. "You knew her?" "Yes." "Did you see her after she disappeared?" He hesitated. "Yes." "Where?" 6 months ago." "When did you see her?" "At Bellwether Point." My heart started pounding. What was she doing there? "I don't know." "Why didn't you tell me?" He said nothing. Cressida stepped closer. "When did you see her?" Bramwell finally looked at me. "In the parking garage beneath your mother's house. That property has been locked for years." "I know." "Then how did Morel get inside?" "I don't know." My phone vibrated again. This time, the message contained a photograph. It showed the entrance to Bellwether Point. A woman stood beside a black sedan. I recognized her from old family photographs. My mother. But she wasn't alone. Beside her was Morel Danton. The timestamp was from 11 years ago. Then another message appeared. "Your mother didn't discover the scheme. She was investigating it." Bramwell was already staring at the photograph. Then he whispered something that made everyone go silent. "Morel wasn't working for my father." "Then who is she working for?" Bramwell swallowed. "I don't know." The lights in her house went out. A second later, the security alarm began screaming. From the hallway came the unmistakable sound of a door opening upstairs. The alarm stopped after 12 seconds. Bramwell reached the control panel. "Stay here." Cressida grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. "I'm coming." We moved through the dark hallway while rain struck the windows. The alarm had stopped, leaving only the sound of our footsteps. The upstairs door was open. Bramwell entered first. The room looked untouched at first. Then I saw the drawers. Every drawer in my desk had been opened. My laptop was gone. "So much for the security system," Oren said. Bramwell looked toward the window. It was locked. There was someone here. Cressida pointed to the floor. A wet shoe print crossed the carpet. "Someone left through the bathroom," she said. We checked it. The bathroom window was open, but it was too narrow for an adult to climb through. Unia crouched beside the frame. "There's a mark on the latch." She took a photograph. "Someone opened this from inside." I felt a chill. If they came through the front door, the alarm should have triggered. "Unless they had a code," Unia said. I looked at Bramwell. He noticed. "I didn't give anyone the code." "You knew it." So did you. And Cressida. She shook her head. I never had it. The implications settled over us. Someone who had been inside our house before had entered while 14 people were downstairs. Bramwell checked his phone. There are no security alerts. Then someone disabled the alarm first, Unia said. He stared at her. That requires administrator access. Who has administrator access? Me. I looked at him. Only you. Yes. That answer lasted less than a minute. Juniper Hale, my mother's former legal assistant, spoke from the hallway. No. There is another administrator. Everyone turned. She opened her folder. Your mother added a secondary emergency administrator 11 years ago. Bramwell's expression changed. Who? Juniper looked directly at me. Your husband. I stared at him. You told me you had no access. I forgot. You forgot. I didn't know it was still active. Juniper shook her head. It was used 6 months ago. Unia checked the security records. Someone has been using Bramwell's credentials. Bramwell's face hardened. I didn't do it. Unia looked at him. Then someone has been using your identity too. That changed the room. Until then, I had believed Bramwell was simply lying to me. Now I wasn't sure whether he was the person controlling the scheme or another person being controlled. The police arrived shortly after midnight. An officer named Mara Ellison took statements from everyone. She examined the upstairs room, photographed the footprint, and asked about the missing laptop. Was anything else taken? My personal files, I said. Any financial information? Yes. Her expression became serious. Then assume your accounts are compromised. I nodded. The officer looked at Bramwell. Who else has access to this house? No one. Mara glanced at the security panel. That's not what the system log says. Bramwell went silent. The following morning, I drove north with Cressida, Unia, and Bramwell. Bellwether Point stood on a narrow road beside the sea. Bramwell unlocked the door. I looked at him. When did you last come here? 6 months ago. Why? I was checking the property. Alone? Yes. Inside, we searched the office first. The desk drawers were empty. The cabinet was locked. Bramwell tried a key. Nothing. Unia examined the lock. This was changed. By whom? Recently. I noticed a fresh scratch around the keyhole. Someone had been here. Cressida opened an old cabinet. Inside was a stack of property records. She pulled one out. Olivia. I came closer. The document showed that Bellwether Point had been purchased through a company called Northmere Properties. I turned toward Bramwell. Your family owned this? No. Unia pointed to the bottom. Look at the beneficiary. I read it. Anderson Family Trust. My mother had owned the property through a company, but the next document showed something stranger. The company had transferred a controlling interest to another entity. The beneficiary was listed as an unnamed private trust. What does that mean? Unia answered carefully. It means someone tried to hide who controlled the property. Who? We need the original filing. A floorboard creaked behind us. Bramwell turned. Nobody was there. Then we heard a car outside. Cressida looked through the window. A black sedan. My stomach tightened. Is it the same one from the photograph? She nodded. The sedan stopped near the gate. A woman stepped out. I recognized her immediately. Morel Danton. The woman who had supposedly disappeared. She looked directly at the house. Then she raised one hand. A warning. She turned and walked away. Bramwell ran outside. Morel? She didn't stop. He followed her toward the road. I stayed behind with Cressida and Unia. Then, Unia noticed something beneath the desk. A small metal box. It had a combination lock. On the lid was a handwritten number. I recognized it. It was my mother's birthday. I entered the numbers. The box opened. Inside was the encrypted drive. And a second envelope. My name was written on it. I opened it. The letter contained only 3 lines. Olivia, if Morel returns, do not let Bramwell take you to the archive room. He knows what is inside. I looked toward the road. Bramwell was still talking to Morel. He suddenly turned. His eyes met mine through the window. For the first time, I saw fear on his face. Not fear of Morel, fear of what I had just found. When he came back inside, I held up the letter. What archive room? He stopped. I don't know. Then why does my mother say you know? He didn't answer. Cressida stepped between us. Bramwell, enough. He looked at the floor. There is an archive room. Where? Behind the library. I stared at him. You knew it existed. Yes. What is inside? He looked at me for several seconds. Everything your mother was trying to protect. Then he added quietly, and if Morel knows you found the drive, she'll come back for it. My phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. I answered. Nobody spoke. Then a woman's voice whispered, Olivia, your husband is lying again. I froze. Morel? Yes. Where are you? Not far. The call ended. A message arrived immediately. Go to the archive room alone. A second message followed. Before Bramwell gets there first. I slipped the encrypted drive into the inside pocket of my jacket and handed the metal box to Cressida. Keep this, I whispered. Her eyes narrowed. What did Morel say? She wants me in the archive room. Then we don't let you go alone. I agree. Bramwell was standing near the library door, watching us. What are you two whispering about? Nothing, I said. He looked at my jacket. You found something. No. He smiled faintly. You're a terrible liar. So are you. Then he opened the library door. The archive is behind this wall. He pressed a panel beside the bookshelves. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Cressida folded her arms. You said there was a room. There is. Then open it. Bramwell looked irritated. It has an old mechanism. He removed a brass key from his pocket. I stared at it. Where did you get that? My father gave it to me. When? Years ago. He inserted the key. A section of the bookshelf moved inward. Behind it was a narrow passage. I turned on my phone flashlight. The passage ended at a steel door. There was no handle, only a keypad. Bramwell entered 6 numbers. The door unlocked. I stopped him. What numbers? My father's birthday. The door opened. The archive room was smaller than I expected. Metal shelves lined every wall. Boxes were arranged by year, with filing cabinets in the center. A security camera pointed toward the entrance. I looked at Bramwell. Why is there a camera? To protect the records. Who monitors it? He hesitated. I don't know. Unia stepped into the room. I do. She connected her laptop to the camera system. The footage is stored remotely. Can you access it? Yes. She began scrolling. Then she stopped. Olivia. I moved beside her. The footage showed the archive room from the previous night. At 10:47 p.m., the door opened. A man entered. His face was covered. He carried my laptop. He placed it on the desk. Then he removed a folder from the second shelf. I recognized the box. It was labeled A17. The man turned toward the camera. His height, posture, and jacket looked familiar. Cressida looked at Bramwell. That's your jacket. Bramwell stared at the screen. I don't own that one anymore. The footage continued. The man removed a document. Then he stopped. Someone else entered the room. A woman. Morel Danton. The man stepped toward her. They argued. We couldn't hear the conversation. Then Morel slapped him. The man pushed her away. I covered my mouth. Stop. Unia paused the footage. The man looked up. Then he removed his mask. I stared at the frozen image. It wasn't Bramwell. It was someone I knew. Orrin Whitlock. Cressida stepped backward. No. Orrin had been one of the 14 relatives at my dinner, supposedly helping us uncover the missing money. I felt betrayed. Why would Orrin do this? Bramwell answered quietly. Because he knows what's in the archive. How? My father told me. Cressida looked furious. You've known, I suspected. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't know who to trust. The room became silent. Then footsteps sounded in the passage. Everyone turned. Orrin stood in the doorway. His face was calm. You should not have watched that footage. Cressida moved toward him. What did you do? Oren didn't answer. Unia closed her laptop. You accessed the archive last night. Yes. You attacked Morel.
No.
The footage showed otherwise.
Oren looked at me.
I didn't attack her. You pushed her. I was trying to stop her. From doing what? From telling you the truth. I felt my stomach tighten. What truth? Oren looked at Bramwell, then back at me. Your mother didn't trust Bramwell. I know.
No.
You don't. He stepped into the room. She trusted my father. Cressida stared at him. Your father died before Olivia's mother. He left instructions. Oren removed a folded document from his coat. My father was one of the trustees. He placed it on the table. He discovered the trust had been used to purchase properties for people outside the family. Unia read the document. Beneficial ownership agreements. Oren nodded. Your mother found out. And Morel? She was working for the law firm handling those properties. I looked at Bramwell. Then why did she disappear? Because your mother threatened to expose everyone. Bramwell stepped forward. And your father? Oren looked at him. He was one of them. That stopped Bramwell. Oren continued. He wasn't protecting Olivia's mother. He was protecting himself. I looked at the archive shelves. Then why were you helping Bramwell? I wasn't. You were in the archive. I was trying to destroy one document. Which one? Oren pointed to shelf A17. The original ownership agreement. I moved toward it. Why? Because my father's signature is on it. Cressida stared at him. So you were covering for him?
No.
Oren's voice cracked. I was covering for my mother. He opened the box. Inside were photographs, bank records, and letters. Then he pulled out a death certificate. My mother's name was on it. The date was wrong. I stared. She died on August 14th. That is the official date. But the document inside says August 16th. Oren looked at me. Because the original medical record says she was alive for 2 more days. My heart stopped. What happened during those 2 days? Nobody answered. Then the archive door slammed shut. The lights went out. A woman's voice came from the other side. Now you finally know why your mother was killed. I recognized the voice. Morel. But before anyone could reach the door, the lock engaged. And from the other side, she said one final sentence. Bramwell didn't forge your signature. A pause. He was trying to stop the person who did. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The archive room was dark except for the faint light from Unia's laptop. Morel's voice had disappeared. I turned toward Bramwell. What did she mean? He didn't answer. Bramwell.
He looked at me.
I didn't forge your signature. You expect me to believe that?
No.
His voice was quiet. I expect you to look at the evidence. Unia used her phone light to find the emergency lamp. The room filled with a weak yellow glow. Cressida immediately went to the door. It won't open. Oren stepped toward the keypad. The lock has been overridden. By Morel? I asked. Probably. Unia looked at Bramwell. Can you override it? He nodded. I need the administrator code. Which is? He hesitated. My birthday. Cressida gave him a cold look. Try it. He entered the numbers. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Bramwell stared at the keypad. Someone changed the code. I looked at him. Who? I don't know. Oren suddenly spoke. I do. Everyone turned. My father. Bramwell frowned. Your father died 8 years ago. Exactly. Oren removed a small notebook from his pocket. My father expected someone to find this room eventually. He opened it. Inside were columns of numbers and initials. I recognized one set of initials. MD. Morel Danton. Another set was BV. Bramwell Voss. And beneath them was OW. Oren Whitlock. I stared at him. You were involved. Oren shook his head. My father used my initials without telling me. Then why are they here? Because he was preparing to blame me if the scheme was discovered. That sounded convenient. Too convenient. Cressida seemed to think the same thing. You expect us to believe your father built an entire financial operation and planned to make his own son the scapegoat? Oren looked at her. He didn't trust anyone. Neither do you.
No.
He closed the notebook. Not anymore. Unia continued examining the security system. Then she stopped. Wait.
What?
The door wasn't locked from outside. She connected another cable. It was locked from inside. I looked around. Then how did Morel lock us in? Unia pointed to a small device beneath the keypad. Remote trigger. Who has access? She checked the system. 3 devices. Whose? She read the names. Bramwell's phone, Olivia's old tablet, and an unknown device. My heart dropped. My old tablet was thrown away. When? 2 years ago. Bramwell looked at me. Are you sure? Yes. Unia frowned. Then someone recovered it. She began checking the connection history. A location appeared. The device had connected to the house network that afternoon. From inside her home, I remembered something. Bramwell. What? When we arrived at Bellwether Point, did you lock the front door? Yes. Did you check the house? Yes. Did anyone stay behind?
No.
I looked at Unia. What if someone was already inside? Before she could answer, my phone vibrated. A message from Morel. Look under shelf A17. I crouched beside the shelf. There was a loose metal panel beneath it. I pulled it away. Inside was a small black case. Bramwell immediately said, "Don't open that." I stopped. Why? I don't know. That isn't an answer. It could be dangerous. Oren laughed bitterly. Everything is dangerous to you when Olivia gets close to the truth. Bramwell ignored him. Olivia let Unia examine it. She took the case. There was no lock. Inside was a flash drive and 3 photographs. The first showed my mother standing outside Bellwether Point. The second showed Bramwell's father. The third showed a woman I had never seen. Unia looked at the photograph. That woman is Morel's sister. I frowned. Why would my mother photograph her? Because she was a witness. To what? Unia turned the photograph over. There was a date. August 14th. The date my mother supposedly died. Cressida looked at me. Olivia, your mother didn't die at the hospital. I felt my chest tighten. What? Unia checked the back of the photograph. There is a location. Bellwether Point. I looked at Bramwell. You said your father had nothing to do with my mother's death. I said I didn't know. You were here 6 months ago. Yes. What were you looking for? The archive. Why? Because Morel told me your mother's records were here. And you didn't tell me? I was trying to protect you. I almost laughed. You keep using that word. What word? Protect. I stepped closer. Every time you say you're protecting me, I discover another lie. He looked away. Oren spoke quietly. There is something else. He reached into his coat. A recording device. He pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room. I had heard recordings of her before, but never this one. She sounded frightened. If you're hearing this, the transfer has already happened. A man's voice interrupted. I recognized it. Garrick Voss. Bramwell's father. You should have signed. My mother answered, I will never give you control. Garrick said, then Olivia will pay for your decision. I looked at Bramwell. His face had gone white. The recording continued. My mother said, she has nothing to do with this. Garrick replied, she will. Then there was a loud sound. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Bramwell sat down. My father threatened you? He threatened my mother. And you knew. I knew he was dangerous. You knew enough. Yes. Then why did you stay with him? Bramwell looked at me. Because when I tried to leave, he threatened to destroy you. I shook my head. That makes no sense. It does if you understand what he had. What? Your mother's medical records. I stared at him. My mother was sick. She was. What does that have to do with you? Bramwell rubbed his face. Your mother had been diagnosed with a condition that could have made her vulnerable to pressure. My father used that information. Cressida looked furious. He blackmailed her. Yes. And you helped him? I was 23. You were an adult. I know. The door suddenly unlocked. Everyone turned. It opened slowly. Morel stood outside. She looked at me. You've heard enough. Bramwell stood. You shouldn't have come back. I came because Olivia deserves the truth. Where have you been? Running. From whom? Everyone. She looked at me. Your husband is telling you part of the truth. I felt exhausted. Then tell me the rest. Morel entered. She closed the door behind her. Your mother was not killed because of the trust. Then why? Because she found the original records. Records of what? Money. That doesn't explain anything. It was an illegal property network. She pointed toward the shelves. Your mother's trust owned properties that were secretly being used to secure private debts. Your father-in-law, several lawyers, 2 bankers, and a group of investors were involved. My mother discovered them? Yes. And then, she planned to expose them. What stopped her? Morel looked at Bramwell. Your husband. My stomach dropped. Bramwell shook his head.
No.
Morel continued. He brought her to Bellwether Point. I didn't. You did. I brought her here because she asked me to. Morel looked at me. He's telling the truth about that. Bramwell stared at her. You're admitting it? Yes. Why? Because I am tired of running. Morel reached into her coat. She removed a sealed envelope. Your mother gave this to me. She handed it to me. My name was written across the front. I opened it. Inside was a single page. Olivia, if Bramwell ever brings you here, it means he has finally chosen to stop protecting his father. I looked up. Bramwell's eyes were wet. I kept reading. Do not blame him for what he inherited. Blame him only for what he chooses after he knows the truth. My hands trembled. The letter continued. The person who copied your signature is not the person who stole your money. I stopped. What does that mean? Morel answered. Your signature was copied by someone inside your own family. Cressida stepped forward. Who? Morel looked at all of us. Then she looked at Oren. Oren's face changed.
No.
Morel said quietly. Your mother knew who it was. I turned toward Oren. He backed away. Don't look at me. Why? Because I'm not the one you think. Morel shook her head. Oren didn't forge your signature. Then who did? She reached into her bag and removed another file. I found the original authorization. She opened it. The signature looked exactly like mine. But beneath it was a witness signature. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Cressida's. She went completely still. I stared at her. Cressida. She couldn't speak. Morel closed the file. Your cousin didn't forge your signature. She looked at me. She witnessed it. Cressida finally whispered. I thought you signed it. My stomach turned. When? 3 months ago. I was never there. I know that now. She began crying. I received a copy from Bramwell. He told me you had signed it. I looked at my husband. He shook his head. I never sent it to her. Cressida looked between us. Then who did? Morel answered. The same person who has been controlling your accounts. She pointed toward the archive door. Someone who has had access to Olivia's identity for years. Then the flash drive in Unia's hand began blinking. A new file appeared on her screen. The file name was simple. Olivia_Anderson_final. MP4. Unia opened it. The screen showed me, sitting at a desk, signing a document. I stared at the recording. That isn't me. Unia paused the video. The face was mine. The voice was mine. Even the scar on my left eyebrow was visible. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never recorded that video. Then the image changed. The camera pulled back. I saw the room around the woman. I recognized it immediately. It was our bedroom. And the woman sitting in my chair was wearing the exact clothes I had worn on the day of my surgery. Bramwell whispered, "That's impossible." I couldn't breathe. Morel looked at me. "It isn't." She pointed at the screen. "Someone filmed this while you were under anesthesia." Then Unia noticed the timestamp. Her face changed. "Olivia." "What?" "This wasn't filmed 5 days ago." She turned a laptop toward me. The recording was dated 18 months earlier, and the woman on the screen had my face. But she was signing a document I had never seen. Morel looked toward the archive shelves. "The forgery didn't begin with your surgery. It began long before. I stared at the frozen image. Then I noticed something behind the woman. A framed photograph. My mother's photograph. And beside it stood a person whose reflection was visible in the mirror. I leaned closer. The reflection belonged to a woman. I knew her. She had been at my dinner. She had carried one of the 14 boxes. She had been sitting quietly at my table while we accused everyone else. I whispered her name. Cressida. She turned toward me. And before she could answer, the archive door locked again. The archive door locked again. Cressida stood 3 feet away from me, her face pale. No, she whispered. I looked at the screen. The woman in the old recording had my face, my voice, and my clothes. But the reflection in the mirror behind her belonged to someone else. Cressida. I turned toward my cousin. You were there. She shook her head. Not 18 months ago. Then why are you in the reflection? I don't know. Morel stepped closer to the screen. Because she wasn't filming you. Everyone looked at her. She was filming someone else. Unia replayed the final seconds. The woman at the desk signed the document. Then she moved aside. For less than 2 seconds, her face became visible in the mirror. It wasn't my face. It was a mask. Remarkably realistic one. I stared at the screen. She was wearing my face. Yes, Morel said. Why? To make the recording look authentic. Cressida covered her mouth. Who was behind the mask? Morel didn't answer. She looked at Bramwell. He understood before I did. Celine. Morel nodded. The woman who taught your husband how to access the accounts. Bramwell stepped back.
No.
She created the video. But she disappeared 3 years ago. She didn't disappear. She changed identities. Unia stopped the video. Wait. She zoomed in on the reflection. The person behind the masked woman was holding something. A phone. On its case was a small silver crescent. I remembered it. Celine had carried that same phone during a meeting with Bramwell 2 years earlier. I had seen it on our kitchen counter. I had never thought about it again. Unia searched the recovered records. Celine's old phone was registered to a company called Northmere. Cressida looked at Bramwell. And you knew her? Yes. How long? Since my father hired her. Why did you keep working with her? Bramwell looked at me. Because she threatened to release the recordings. What recordings? The ones of me accessing Olivia's accounts. I stared at him. So you were being blackmailed? Yes. But you still took the money. I did. Why? He looked ashamed. Because I believed I could pay her enough to make it stop. And when that failed, I tried to take control of the trust. The truth finally settled into place. Bramwell hadn't been innocent, but he hadn't been the person who began the fraud either. He had made choices after becoming trapped. Bad choices. Deliberate choices. And those choices had hurt me. Morel opened another folder. Celine needed someone inside the family. Who? She looked at Cressida. Not Cressida. Cressida exhaled. Thank God. Morel continued. She needed someone who could confirm that Olivia's signature looked genuine. I looked at the 14 boxes from the dinner. Then why did she want everyone here? Because Bramwell needed a final witness. To what? Your supposed consent. I remembered the papers on the sideboard. The family consent document. The one Bramwell had wanted me to sign. If I had signed it, the forged video would have made the fraud appear legitimate. But I hadn't. And the 14 relatives had brought the documents that exposed the missing money. The plan had collapsed before it began. Unia suddenly smiled. Then we have enough. Enough for what? Everything. She explained that the video, transaction records, security footage, forged documents, and messages from Celine formed a chain of evidence. But there was one problem. We need the original server. Where? Northmere. Morel shook her head. It's gone. Unia looked at her.
No.
She opened the metadata from the video. The recording was uploaded from a private server. Where? She displayed the location. Our house. I stared at the screen. That can't be. It was uploaded from your home network 18 months ago. Bramwell suddenly looked toward me. That's when you went to your mother's funeral anniversary. I remembered. I had been away for 3 days. Bramwell had stayed home. He had said he was working. I looked at him. You had access to the house. Yes. Who else? No one. Morel interrupted. Celine did. When? During those 3 days. Bramwell looked shocked.
How?
She had a key. I turned toward him. You gave her a key?
No.
Then who did? He didn't know. Unia closed her laptop. We need to leave.
Why?
Because someone is trying to erase the server remotely. A warning appeared on her screen. Delete command received. She disconnected immediately. Can they still erase it? Not if we reach the physical backup. Where is that? She looked at Bramwell. You installed the security system. He thought for several seconds. The basement. We left the archive room and hurried through the house. The basement smelled damp. Old storage boxes filled the walls. Bramwell moved toward a metal cabinet. There. He opened it. Inside were routers, backup drives, and security equipment. Unia found the server. She connected her laptop. It's still active. Then the system displayed a folder. Family Trust Raw Records. She opened it. There were hundreds of files. Bank statements. Property deeds. Voice recordings. Photographs. Emails. And one folder labeled Garrick Voss, Final Instructions. Bramwell stared at it. My father's name. Unia opened it. The first file was a scanned letter. Garrick had written it shortly before his death. He described the entire property network. But one sentence made me stop. The Anderson Trust was never intended to belong to Olivia. I looked at Unia. What does that mean? She continued reading. The trust was created as temporary protection until the original beneficiary could be identified. Who was the original beneficiary? The answer appeared on the next page. A name. Not mine. Not Bramwell's. Not Oren's. I read it twice. Morel Danton. I looked at her. She didn't move. You were the beneficiary?
No.
Then why is your name there? Morel closed her eyes. Because I was supposed to inherit it. Cressida stared. Why? My mother. She explained that her mother had originally purchased the coastal property with my grandfather's business partner. The property was later placed into the Anderson Trust as part of a settlement. When Morel's mother died, the ownership was supposed to transfer to Morel. But the paperwork had been altered. My mother discovered the fraud. Instead of transferring the property, she kept it protected inside the trust. That was the secret, Morel said. You wanted the property?
No.
She looked at me. I wanted the truth about what happened to my mother. The room went silent. Was she involved? She was accused of stealing money. She wasn't. Who framed her?
Garrick.
Bramwell looked sick. My father? Yes. Morel's voice became harder. He used her company to move money, then blamed her when the investors demanded answers. What happened to her? She died in prison. I looked at Bramwell. He looked down. I didn't know. You didn't ask. He had no defense. Morel continued. Your mother tried to clear my mother's name. And that got her killed? Yes. Unia looked at the server. We have enough evidence now. Then the basement door opened. We all turned. A man stood at the top of the stairs. He was wearing a police uniform, but I had never seen him before. He held a gun. Step away from the server. Bramwell moved in front of me. The man aimed at him. Move. Bramwell didn't. Cressida whispered, Olivia, get behind me. The officer looked at Unia. Give me the drive. Unia raised her hands. Which drive? All of them. Morel stepped forward. You're too late. The man fired. The shot struck the metal cabinet beside her. Everyone screamed. Bramwell pulled me behind a concrete pillar. Unia dropped to the floor. Cressida grabbed the emergency fire extinguisher. Then the basement lights went out. A struggle followed. I heard someone fall. Then footsteps raced up the stairs. Bramwell shouted, Stay here. A minute later, the house was silent. Police sirens approached from the road. Real police this time. Mara Ellison entered the basement with several officers. She found the fake officer's badge on the floor. He ran. Unia held up the server drive. He didn't get this. Mara looked at me. Are you Olivia Anderson? Yes. You need to come with us.
Why?
She handed me a document. It was an arrest warrant. The name on it was not Bramwell. It was Celine Harrow. She's been located, Mara said. Where? In the city. Is she alone? Mara shook her head. No. She handed me another photograph. It showed Celine being escorted from a hotel. Beside her was the man who had just attacked us. I recognized him. He had been one of the 14 relatives at my dinner. Torrin Bellamy. My mouth went dry. Torrin. Mara nodded. He was working with Celine. I thought back to the dinner. He had arrived carrying a box. He had acted frightened. He had talked about missing scholarship money. He had helped us uncover the scheme. But the entire time, he had been planting evidence where we would find it. I looked at Cressida. How much of what we found was real? Most of it, Unia said. That was the trick. Torrin hadn't needed to invent everything. He only needed to mix the truth with enough lies to steer us toward the wrong person. And he had succeeded. Until tonight. Mara looked at Bramwell. You're coming with us, too. He nodded. I understand. I expected him to protest. He didn't. Before he left, he turned toward me. I am sorry. I believed him. But forgiveness was not the same as trust. I know. He walked away with the officers. The following morning, I gave the server to investigators. For weeks, they uncovered everything. Celine had created the fake identity. Torrin had helped her access relatives' information. Garrick Voss had started the property scheme. Several lawyers and financial officers had helped conceal it. Bramwell had participated later, moving money and trying to protect himself. He eventually admitted everything. But one question remained. Who had ordered the attack at Bellwether Point? The answer came 3 months later. It wasn't Celine. It wasn't Torrin. It wasn't even one of Garrick's old associates. It was a bank executive whose name appeared in the original records. He had spent 11 years keeping the scheme hidden. The evidence from my mother's archive finally put him on trial. And my mother's name was cleared. 6 months after the dinner, the trust was restored. The stolen money was recovered in part. The coastal property remained mine. But I chose not to keep it for myself. I turned it into an educational center funded by the trust. The first scholarship went to a student whose family could never have afforded university tuition. I named the building after my mother. Not after Bramwell. Not after the people who stole from us. After the woman who refused to sign. The 14 relatives never gathered in my house again. Instead, we met at the coastal property once the renovation was complete. There were 14 chairs around a long table. This time, I had arranged them myself. Cressida raised her glass. To surviving the truth. I smiled. To choosing what comes after it. She looked at me. Do you regret that night? I thought about the surgery. The forged signature. The boxes. The lies. The archive. The gunshot.
No.
She looked surprised. Nothing. I regret what people did. I regret what I allowed myself to believe. But I don't regret finding out. I looked around the room. My mother's records were preserved behind glass. The trust was protected by independent trustees. No single person could move money without oversight. And nobody could ever again use my name without leaving a trail. Bramwell pleaded guilty. He lost his company, his license, and the house we once shared. He also agreed to repay the trust from every remaining asset. Celine received a long prison sentence.
Torrin did too.
The bank executive who had ordered the attack was convicted after the evidence from the server connected him to the entire network. That was the karma I wanted. Not destruction. Exposure. Everyone had to live with the truth they had tried to hide. As for me, I finished recovering. It took longer than the doctors predicted. Some days were difficult. But 1 year after the surgery, I stood on the porch of Bellwether Point and watched students arrive for the first summer program. I thought about Bramwell's order. 14 relatives. 1 dinner. 1 signature. He believed that if enough people witnessed me sign away my rights, the truth would become whatever he needed it to be. Instead, 14 people walked into my home carrying pieces of the evidence. And in the end, I learned something I wish I had understood much earlier. A signature is not consent when it is taken through deception. Family is not loyalty when it demands silence. And protecting someone does not mean deciding what they are allowed to know. My name is Olivia Anderson. The signature was mine. The choice was mine. And this time, nobody else was going to make it for me.